Today on Quilting Done Quickly, we are going to do a t-shirt quilt. Now, the most awesome show I saw today on Fawns and Porter was when they put the backing on it on all the t-shirts. And so if you want to be a person who puts backing on t-shirts, you go for it. But I'm telling you, this is the first quilt I've ever done that I put backing on, and it stunk. Every time I went to sew on my long arm quilting machine with the backing, it would separate even though I ironed it for the amount of time, and it would pucker. I have never had this much trouble in my entire life. So I'm going to show you what really happened to me. For 20 years, my friend Teresa and I have been doing t-shirt quilts. Now this is a sweatshirt. They don't stretch as much. And this is actually t-shirt. I hope you can hear this to what happens. So when I went to my friend Connie's house the other day, and she has an awesome long arm quilting machine. She has a Gamma with a Statler stitcher, and so it pretty much, you just tell it what to do and it does it. And she said, come over and look at this. Look at what's happening. And what happened when she went to the edge, all the way over to the edge, it was making a pucker right here, and it was about an inch, and it puckered it over. And she says, I have never had problems with this, ever. And also, I have never had problems with it. But then I got to thinking after I did my quilt that this is what happened. Can you hear it? You might not have heard it, but all of a sudden, if you stretch it at all, it just separates and comes off. So what happened with me on my quilt is it actually puckered. It actually separated from the back as I just pulled it taut on my machine, and it all separated. So this was a separate piece than this, even though it was ironed on correctly. And this is the kind of interfacing that has little glue dots on it. So I just told my friend Teresa, who lives in Ballard, Utah, I said, hey, I think we should start doing our t-shirt quilts with the backing on it. And so she bought a bolt, and I also bought a bolt of interfacing. And I just called her this morning and I said, listen, we're doing a Quilting Done Quickly video, and we're going to tell people that we've been doing this for 20 years without the backing, and we have not had very many problems. Okay, so actually what I am going to use is going to be a 6-inch and a 12.5-inch square and a 15.5-inch square. I'm going to use all three of those to cut my t-shirts. To cut a t-shirt, I have one here that only has a front. So this one isn't quite big enough. I'm not even going to cut anything else. I'm not going to cut the sides off. I'm just going to cut this off. I'm cutting through 2 pieces of fabric. See my rotary blade? Harbor Freight, 2 for $1.99. The secret for these Harbor Freight ones are they're carpet cutters, and they don't come with any lubrication on them. So when you put them into your cutter, you just put a little drop of oil on it, and they work awesome. And you don't feel bad if you run over a pin, and they didn't cost you $10 per blade or $5 per blade. They cost you $1 per blade. Go to Harbor Freight. So I'm saving this one out because I'm going to put 4 of these together to make one 12.5-inch block. This one has a back, and it also has a front. So I'm going to show you how to cut it really easily. Cut the sides off. Cut the top off. This one has been in a home with dogs, so it has a little bit of dog hair on it. So I'm going to take my tape and I'm going to get some of that dog hair off of there. Here's another 1/4 of a block. I'm just eyeballing it. This is Quilting Done Quickly, not done correctly. So if you have a freak out about that, you can measure it a little safer than I am. And this I could either use as a big, huge block, or I could use as a half block. And I think I'm going to use it as a half block. But if you're worried because you don't know how many blocks you're going to use, you can go ahead and cut this as a 12.5-inch block, and then later you could cut it down. But I'll just show you what I'm going to do to cut for a 1/2-inch block. Just eyeball it. You're not supposed to cut across your body. That's what we do to do quilting done quickly. We cut across our body. Okay, so here you have some blocks. You could put these two together, or these three together and make a block. Or, for instance, this was a sleeve. This was also a sleeve. Not big enough though, so I've got to actually put a little bit of sashing around it and then cut it again to make it big enough. But look at how awesome this was. This was also a sleeve of a football jersey. And here's another sleeve. And it even has the little cuff on the little sleeve. It's no problem. This is Moda Grunge, Basic Gray. This is something I'll be using. And I got this from my local quilt shop in Cedar City. And this is also Moda Grunge. I got that from Thousands of Bolts. You can see it's black. And then I also have Riley Blake that looks similar to Moda Grunge. And this is called a blender. It's called Blenders. And I got this from a local quilt shop in St. George, actually Santa Clara. It's called Clover Patch. And it's an awesome shop because everything in the store is $8.99, which is a great deal. I went to my sewing machine after I cut a whole bunch of 2-inch strips of these. I just cut a whole bunch of 2-inch strips to go around the whole outside. And I sewed them together like a binding, like you would. I cut 6 at a time. I sewed 6 together so I had a big long strip. And I didn't even measure. I just was very careful. You're always very careful, and you put it right on the top of your t-shirt. And make sure your t-shirt's on the bottom when you sew it, and you don't stretch anything. And so then I brought it back to I ironed it. I ironed it with all the seams going, the t-shirt seams going out, and then I lined it up with my 15-inch ruler. So I had, on every block, I just had a little tiny bit to trim off. So now I know everything is perfectly 15 inches. And if it didn't have a 12.5-inch square, like this one was the 15-inch square, then I just left it alone because this is 15 inches. What I did is I made all my 12.5-inch squares match 15. I'm going to take every single piece and just chain sew it through and put another sashing on. I'm going to put another sashing on. And then after I take those, and you can iron them or not, that's up to you. Then after I take all those pieces, then I'll make some more pieces like this, sew those together. So what my whole quilt will have is every single quilt square will have a sashing on the side, and it will have a cornerstone and a sashing on the bottom. That makes it so the whole quilt is almost done, as in you sew all the pieces together, and then all you have left is the whole entire side of your quilt and the whole entire top of your quilt that you just have to chain sew a long strip and with cornerstones and sashings. So I have 20 pieces here of shirts. 20 pieces. So so 4 across, 5 down. So this is how you figure out how many sashings you need. 4 times 5 is 20. And then 20 times 2 is 40, because you're going to need, on every 20 squares, you're going to need one of these, and then you're going to need one of these on the bottom. So one on the side and one on the bottom. So that's 40. And then you count how many you have on the side, which is 5, and 4 on the top. So that's 9. So I need 49 pieces. I need 49 pieces. 50, so I'll divide that in half, 25, because I can only get 2 15-inch pieces out of a width of fabric. Of course, you can sew some of the ends together and get another piece, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to even up here, and I'm going to cut 25 times. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut a whole bunch of widths of fabric, 4 inches. 2, 3, 4. So I just cut 4 of them. Two on top of each other. Two on top of each other. Get my big 15-inch square. Now you can go sew these together and get another 15-inch square. Looks like it turns out to be about 11 and a half. Okay, I decided to sew all of my pieces together that I had left over that were only like about 11 and a half. And I ironed the crease out of them. And I used the scraps to make some more. Now here's what the block looks like with all its cornerstone and sashing on. And so you'll make sure all 20 blocks have that 4-inch sash, 4-inch by 15, and this is a 4x4. Okay, here's a really good secret when you are sewing your cornerstones and sashings together. See, that's my block, and then my cornerstone is on top and my sashing. So, I don't ever pin. I hardly ever pin, because if it works out right, this top seam is going to go up, and this bottom seam is going to go down. Top seam will just nestle right into that bottom seam. So, make sure the top seam goes up, and the bottom folds back, and then they will just... It'll just sew, just hold it with your hand and make sure that it stays there. Okay, I just did it, and look at that. There couldn't be a more perfect meeting of the seams. Now I have sewed 2 blocks together because I have a 4x5 quilt, so I just went ahead and sewed 2 blocks together. And now I'm going to go sew these 2s together to make 4 to make each of my rows.